Today I am gonna break down every tanking spec and I am gonna rank them in two categories. Here, best and not the best. You see there are two basic roles for which a tank can go to: main tank and off tank, aka single target boss tank and AoE tank mainly, right? And it just so happens that all of these specs have a bias towards one of those roles, right? So in theory we have like one spec that is the better of being the main tank and one spec that is just slightly worse, and the same for off tank. So that's why I just made two tiers for this one. We are gonna start with one of my favorites right here. Apparently you see the feral tank. Okay, now a big reason that I always recommend the feral tank is that no matter what, it is the easiest tank in the game, right? And Cataclysm is no exception. They have an insanely easy AoE rotation while most other specs are pretty hard. Their single target, it does have a little bit of complexity, don't get me wrong, but it's pretty easy too, compared to the other classes at least. Okay, so how the feral tank works. They have insane armor and a lot of dodge and no blocking. Okay, so they are just giant boxing bags. Now I know what you're thinking, right? Like, they take so much damage because they have a high HP. They must be a nightmare to heal, right? Well, actually no. There are two very important things you gotta know about the feral tank. One of these things is that they have savage defense. Basically, their attack power mitigates the next hit that they take. And you may be saying, okay, it's a tank. Why does attack power matter? Okay, there's this new mechanic in Cataclysm. They call it Vengeance. Basically, if you're a tank and you get hit, you gain attack power. So you see how that works, right? Your attack power mitigates you, you gain attack power, very synergistic kind of deal. Another thing is that you have the Glyph of Frenzied Regeneration, okay? That's a cooldown that makes you get, I forgot, I think it was 30% extra healing, something like that. So you get a lot of bonus healing received on your cooldowns for defensives. It is very, very good. So yeah, they are not very hard to heal. I mean, you gotta heal them a little more than other classes because they do take more damage number-wise than other classes, and they do have more HP than other classes, but it is not a huge deal, right? They are, in my opinion, also the best tank for both roles, okay? So while most of these classes, actually all of these classes, have a bias towards being like either an off tank or a main tank, I think the bear tank is very competent at both. They are very viable boss tanks and they are very viable off tanks. The only weakness that they got is that they don't do well into magic damage. They don't have any magic damage defenses cooldowns, right? They are stuck in armor. Armor doesn't help with that. And they do have the HP to survive it. They are not awful, but yeah, they will become a problem for the healers, and that's no good. One of the biggest advantages when you take a feral off tank, yeah, is that you can have a competent pure DPS on it, okay? If you take the feral talents, the feral tanking talents, the feral spec, even feral gear, because you stack a lot of agility as a feral tank, you can turn into a cat and do very competent, very acceptable damage, okay? You don't need to be taking damage to do damage. So if you are running two tanks in, say, a 10-man, okay, you can have a feral tank as an off tank, and in the fights where you are single tanking it, solo tanking it, let's say, a feral tank will just be a normal DPS, and that's a lot of value. That's not a wasted slot. But okay, having that said, and even though in my heart, they will always be S tier, objectively speaking, even though they are very good, they are not the best, so they are going to not be. Okay, now we're gonna go with the Prot Paladin right here. This icon looks a little funny, but yeah, this is probably the Prot Paladin by discarding. You see, Prot Paladins are not very good in tier 11. Neither of the blocking tanks are very good in tier 11. But by tier 12, Paladins really get their act together, they get really strong. By tier 13, actually, they become so strong with their scaling that they actually become a serious contender for the best tank. And I don't mean off tank or main tank, I mean best tank period. They scale so well into tier 13 that they can work as an off tank or a main tank very well. Even though by the class design and its abilities it is very clear that this is designed to be an off tank, not a main tank. And they got a lot of better AoE setup, better AoE mitigation and cooldowns for that, obviously, better threats, better everything, AoE. So yeah, you are probably supposed to take this as an off tank. And actually, let me clarify something I just said, right? Their numbers are not great in tier 11. their utility is excellent even in tier 11. Okay, their cooldowns as an off-tank are very valuable, and they are still acceptable in tier 11 with tier 11 gear, okay? So mainly you got all the blessings, the utility that we always talk about paladins, but they also have Divine Guardian. It is basically a free discipline druid in a tank, right? You get 20% reduced damage taken for all the raid. This is basically an intervene, but better, because it also affects magic damage, it also affects abilities, right? Meanwhile, the warrior as an off-tank, which is not even supposed to be an off-tank, it only has intervene to attack, to soak up the next hit, and that's the only utility they get, right? So yeah, this is the only tank that realistically is gonna make your main tank a lot better. Not to mention all the abilities that paladins have to absorb damage taken from a target again. So yeah, actually, let me take that back. They are better than intervene. Even still, and I would say that the bear outclasses it on tier 11 because it simply comes online very soon. The bears in Cataclysm, they don't need a lot of gear to function. Meanwhile, prot paladins need a little bit of mastery and whatnot. I would say still, most of the expansion, they are the best of tank. And that's gonna put them on B. Alright, now we got the Prot Warrior. I have taken a pooper on the Prot Warrior plenty of times before, okay? But today will not be the exception. Prot Warriors suck. Okay, let me explain. They need tier 13 gear to even be decent, and even then they are pretty meh. You see, the problem is that in private servers, and also in Classic for that matter, we are gonna get the 4.3.4 balance and the talents from 4.3.4, and that's an issue because by this point they were expected, right, to have a lot of stats on them, mainly mastery. Mastery gives you block and they need to be avoidance cap to function, and at the same time you are not getting avoidance cap until tier 12, that's an issue. And by the time that they hit avoidance cap in tier 12, they will have no room to get any stamina or any other stats, so they are still gonna be pretty squishy. And besides that, they do not have any particular utility that would make up for it. Intervene is just a weaker version of the paladin cooldowns, and at the same time, they are not even that valuable to begin with. I'd much rather have a feral DPS as an off-tank, a feral tank as an off-tank. They are designed as a boss tank anyway, but since they are gonna be wearing gear that they are not designed for 2 tiers, they are gonna be god-awful, and all that work that you're gonna invest to get into Dragon Soul on tier 11 will pay off, okay, when you get to tier 13, and it will go from awesome to passable. Yeah, it's not worth it. That's why they are on B. The only thing they got that I think is like a strength is their spell reflect, right? Like in some fights the spell reflect is really nice, but we're gonna see that's not even like a big deal because you can get a better option. Okay, the weakness of a Prot Warrior is that it has no strength. There you go. Okay, now we finally got the Blood Decay, okay? The Blood Decay is the only tank that has a 200 big weapon as its weapon, right? And that means it doesn't have any block either. They do have parry. They don't have insane armor like a feral tank either, okay? The only way that they survive is they have insane self-healing. And they have a lot of shields that come from that self-healing. Of course, this means 2 things. First of all is that Blood Decays have insane scaling because, the more you can self-heal, the more you're gonna get value of it. They may not scale as well as a Prot Paladin, but even still they are up there. They are very competent and they also take off pretty much instantly. Like in tier 11 they are already very good. And the other problem is that they are a nightmare to heal. From the perspective of a healer, you're gonna overheal Blood Decay a lot because when you think they are going down, you try to heal them and they just heal it themselves. And otherwise, they are just taking insane amounts of damage because they are supposed to heal off the damage, so it goes unmitigated, so your output of healing has to be higher. That doesn't mean they are bad, quite the contrary, they are very good. They can survive a lot of things that other tanks can't because the absorb shields that they get from the overhealing that they get from their own self-healing is gonna make them survive a lot of damage. If your Blood Decay is bad, it will be a piece of paper, it will be basically a DPS with a bunch of HP, and if your Blood Decay is insane, it will be the best busted broken class in the game. Not to mention their AoE rotation, even though it is decent, it is not bad, It takes 2 or 3 GCDs to get a full threat, a solid threat on the AoE group that you're doing. It is definitely not the best. Blood Decays in the hands of a Giga Chad virgin non-sex having gamer will be the best tank in the freaking game. But in my hands, the only thing I am gonna get is Carpal Tunnel, okay? I am never playing this spec again. It is awful. And even though in my heart, because I despise playing Blood Decays, I wanna put it on not B, objectively they are going on B. So guys, I know you are gonna ask me what I recommend you to play now, and I'm gonna cover some basics. The only spec that I would never recommend anybody to play period is the Prot Warrior. In Cataclysm it is absolutely gutted, it is useless. Like if you wanna be a DPS and then you swap to tanking in tier 13 and like you go from arms to prot, let's say, that is not a huge problem, you can do that, but it's not even worth it. The ideal meta comp for 25 man raiding and 10 man raiding actually is taking a Blood Decay main tank and a Protection Paladin off tank. That's something you're gonna see in all the top guilds. So of course if you wanna play in either one of those specs, if you like either one of those specs, go right ahead, you're gonna do great. Otherwise, if you are not very experienced or if you simply do not want to deal with the awful Blood Decay rotation, and by the way, I am not kidding you when I say I got Carpal Tunnel, that playing Blood Decay is such a strain on your keyboard hand because you gotta spam so much stuff that I literally got hand pains from playing it. So anyway, feral tanks are decent at both roles and they are also very easy for a new player to master. That's why I'm probably gonna play a feral tank myself. I really like that versatility, I like having options. Feral Druid has a lot of good options. Anyway, I am sure you guys disagree with the ranking, so I would love to see what you think in the comments. Otherwise, please like this video and subscribe, and join the Discord in the description, okay? Don't be a Winnie Hat Jr., and thank you for watching.